You know, there's a lot of talk about the alt-right. The alt-right. Some people love them, and some people hate them, and some don't understand who they are and what they represent. I have with me, Skyping, Richard B. Spencer, the co-editor of altright.com and president of the National Policy Institute. And I wanted to talk to Richard. I wanted to speak to him for a while. I want to talk to him about the alt-right, and I'm Skyping with him. Richard, good morning. Welcome to the show.
Good morning. Thank you for having me on. I've been a fan of yours for a number of years, so it's a real honor to be on your show.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. I wanted to talk to you about the alt-right. First, tell us exactly what it is. What does it stand for, and why now?
Well, I first started using the term alternative right or alt-right back in 2008. And at that point, the alt-right was almost more of a negative term. It was defining what we were not more than it was defining what we were. And what we were not was mainstream conservatism, and we were not George W. Bush conservatism. I was very opposed to George W. Bush's wars. I didn't take much of an interest in all of his policies, to be honest. We wanted a new path, a new way forward, and the alt-right was a big tent. If you look at my own personal and professional evolution, it was towards what I would call identitarianism. And that's another term that's thrown out there that's a mouthful. But it's about, you could think of it in terms of identity politics done right, where identity, that is, who are you? Are you part of a bigger family? Are you part of a bigger culture, or part of a bigger civilization, ultimately part of a bigger race? That this identity is at the heart of how you think about the world, how you think about society, how you think about politics. So the alt-right evolved, much like I did, evolved into an identity politics. So I would say that right now, the alt-right, it has lots of different faces. Some of those faces are people on Twitter who are take no prisoners type guys, trolls, that kind of thing, or on 8chan and so on. But the alt-right also comprises a number of thinkers and writers and leaders who are pursuing identity politics done right, done for white people in the United States and really around the world. So this is very different than a conservatism that has its basis in, say, free market economics or libertarianism or foreign policy or so on. Our basis, our starting point is identity. Their starting point are abstract ideas. Our starting point is, who are we?
And when you say, who are we, the white people? Is it for whites only?
Well, it's about white identity. So, could there be someone who is non-white whom we, correspond with, or who writes things that we agree with or resonate with? Of course. But the alt-right really has to be about our identity. There has to be some ideological movement that is about us. Every other people, every other race has an identity politics, and they have their own kind of alt-right, so to speak. They have their own ideological identitarianism. This is for white people. It's only white people who refuse to affirm themselves. And they jump onto abstract terms like we believe in the Constitution or we believe in liberty. The liberty and the Constitution are all fine and good, but those things melt away like snow in the springtime in the face of identity, in the face of who are we as a race, as a people, in terms of our history, in terms of our culture and so much else.
And so just for me, when you say identity politics, you mean like the blacks have their things, the Hispanic have theirs, the women, and those. And so, but that has not been good for them. It is not working out very well for them.
I'm not so sure that it's really been bad for them. I think identity politics is a very natural thing. In a way, all politics is identity politics. All politics is a culture war. In terms of a lot of the things that you talk about in your show, about rebuilding the family, about self-reliance and integrity and so on, those are things that really resonate in the hearts of white people. And that kind of politics really is a kind of white identity politics that is implicit or that is not self-conscious or not spoken. And I for the future, if white people are going to survive in the 21st and 22nd century, we're going to have to survive in worlds that are not white countries. By 2040, whites are going to be a minority in the United States. There are very similar things, different but similar things happening in Europe. If we're going to survive this new world that we're entering, we can't just be talking about abstract ideas like the Constitution. We have to have identity politics. We have to have a sense of ourselves.
Well, but I don't like the fact that we have identity politics in America, because America is America. And when you come up with this identity politics, you tend to divide. It's no longer one nation under God. And I've noticed that people who are into identity politics have been into it for the last however many years. The blacks, the Hispanics, the women, the gays, the whatever. They're all mean, dirty, nasty people. I don't like them. They're very selfish. They're not about America. They're about themselves. And so I don't know if this is a good idea. When I speak of rebuilding the family, I speak of judging people by character, not color, working hard, less government in your life. There's no such thing as racism. It doesn't exist. It's either right or wrong, good or evil. I'm talking about the American way. But identity politics, people who are into that, look how dirty and nasty the Democratic Party is now, because that's all they're about. They're not about America. Do you think doing this with white people may lead down the same road to destruction?
I agree with you that so much from what I see from, say, black identity politicians or race mongers or you can go down the line, feminism or the gay movement or so on, is malign. And I would also say that the things that you put forward are some of the most benign things that I can imagine, such as integrity and family and so on. But we can't unilaterally disarm ourselves in this world. The fact is, if whites are going to survive, we might actually have to get a little tough. We might even have to get a little nasty, because I ultimately care about my extended family, my people, more than I care about the United States of America, to be frank, more than I care about the Constitution, about all this kind of stuff. You know, if you could imagine being a German who was born in, say, the beginning of the 20th century. You could have lived through an imperial realm. You could have lived then, after the First World War, you could have lived through a rather decadent, chaotic democracy, parliamentary democracy. You then could have lived through National Socialism or fascism. You then could have lived through a communist regime if you lived in East Berlin or East Germany. And then by the 1990s, you could be living in an Americanized unified Germany. You would have experienced half dozen different political forms, but you would have still been German. Whether you were under National Socialist Germany or the Weimar Republic or the current Federal Republic of Germany or what have you, you still would have been German. Even if the United States fails, we're still going to be white. The other thing that I would add in terms of the United States history is that we like to latch on to things like the Declaration of Independence and so on. But the assumption of the founding fathers was that the United States would not just be a white country, but it would be a predominantly Anglo-Saxon Protestant country. And they also had a very strong assumption of what, for lack of a better term, of white supremacy. That is that African Americans would never have the same rights as Anglo-Saxon Protestants living in the United States. That's simply an historical fact whether we think it's good or bad or a little bit of both, it's a fact. The United States, the kind of country that was created, that was a post-Enlightenment republic that had certain democratic elements but was Republican, this was designed as a not just racially, but even ethnically homogenous country. When John Jay talked about in one of the Federalist Papers, thank God that we are one people, he was not saying that we were all Americans, and he wasn't even saying that we were all white. He was actually saying, thank God we are one people in the sense that Americans are English-speaking Anglo-Saxon Protestants. So even within a country that is more based on classical liberal ideas, there's still a racial core.
Richard, when I speak of identity politics, I think it's a bad thing, because I noticed that with the blacks, the Hispanics, the women's lib, those people, it's just been negative. It's so dark. It's so selfish. And I know that white Americans need to speak up. I know that, and I've been writing and speaking and saying for a long time, why is it that white folks are allowing themselves to be called racist, robbed, murdered, beat up, and just all kinds of things, and they were not fighting back in any form or fashion. And I didn't understand that. I think it's good that, there is an alt-right, but not as identity politics, because it's just going to divide the country even more so. White people should, I'm not saying disarm yourself. You should stand up. I personally think that if it wasn't for white Americans, there would be no America. I think this country is the greatest country in the world. I think that I see that that white Americans are very creative. They're very motivated, and everybody and their mama want to come here, but when they come, they destroy. They don't build. They don't add on to the country. So I think the movement should be about getting rid of the illegal aliens, putting a wall around the borders, getting rid of all those folks who are here and they don't like what we are about, what America's about, and just make America great again, but not necessarily go into the whiteness. Just do what's right and not what's white.
I understand, and I think what you just expressed was expressed in a very genuine, heartfelt fashion. And I really wish that the way forward that you described were possible. But the fact is, the United States is fragmenting. It's been fragmenting for a long time, actually. It's certainly been fragmenting throughout my lifetime. And I don't think that we can simply convince everyone to embrace the kinds of things that you talked about in your heart. I think that we are actually about to enter a very difficult historical stage. And that is so many of these American assumptions that we are all on the same page when it comes to things socially and culturally, that we can all get along, that this is all one nation, that we have our president, we have our culture, and so on. I think all of these things are being brought into question. The United States right now is shot through with race. And therefore, I think the left is often, they're secretly right, or there's a kernel of truth when they call things racist. So this is racist, this expresses white privilege, and so on. They're actually getting at something when they say this, even though they're easy to make fun of, as you rightfully do often. They're getting at the fact that this is all of the assumptions of our society do derive from the white race at some level, for good and for ill. That when multiple races are brought together and they have different assumptions, they have different worldviews, they have different ways of living, that there is going to be conflict, that people are going to have the meaning of words like freedom, the meaning of words like America, the meaning of words like the Constitution, are going to have different meanings for different people. They're going to have different meanings depending on the perspective that you're looking at. That's just simply where we are. And I don't think we could ever return to some earlier stage of Americanism. The only way forward really is through. We're going to have to pass through this phase that America is in. But if we can come out the other side, then I actually think the white race will be stronger for this.
But will America be stronger, though? Will America be stronger? Because if all the races are divided, it's not going to make the country stronger. And I want America, the country that I was born into. But let me ask you this. Why not? I mean, what went wrong? Why did white Americans just open up the door and allow anybody in? All these people coming from different countries who don't have the same values that we do. They don't believe in what we believe in. You can look at the country and tell what type of people you're letting in. What went wrong that they allowed so many different kinds of people to come here in the beginning?
Well, if you want to find a smoking gun, I think you could find that with the 1965 Immigration Act that was passed under the Lyndon B. Johnson administration. That created the multicultural, multiracial country that we have today. However, I think sometimes it's deceptive just to look at one law or one thing, because oftentimes, or most oftentimes, politics is a lagging indicator. Politics expresses something that happened in our culture or even in our hearts. It expresses it years after the fact. I think the fundamental reason why white people are in the state that we are today, that we've lost America as a bastion of our people, that we are suffering through an opioid epidemic, that our suicide rates are up, our sperm counts are down, our families are breaking apart, we're watching more TV, we're sleeping more, we're overdosing on drugs. All of these things derive from a deeper guilt that we have in our soul. I do think that we are experiencing a spiritual crisis. And, you know, when you think about white people, the way we've thought about things throughout my lifetime, and I'm about 40 years old right now, the way we've thought about things in our lifetime is that if someone came into our culture who isn't us, that's good. If, say, a black person became a CEO of the corporation, oh, that's wonderful. Oh, if we have this new Hispanic actor will enter this new role. Oh, that's so wonderful. If we could do something that wasn't for us, is there a way that we can send a Christian mission out to South Asia or Africa to help people? We want to help. We have demoralized ourselves, and we have moralized non-whites. So we've become obsessed with the other, and we have been afraid to affirm ourselves. And the reason for that is that we have become also obsessed with this. Or we've been haunted, you could say, by this black specter that's hung over our head. Yeah. And that is the specter of slavery, or you could say in Europe, the Holocaust or fascism or Jim Crow or whatever you have to say. We have this guilt complex in our hearts and that's hanging over our head. And that this has led us to become a kind of dying people. So I mean, my way out of this is not just to embrace, say, individualism and fairness. My way out of this is that we're going to have to truly embrace who we are. The white race is not ultimately about fairness or individualism or about constitutionalism or legality. When the Spanish conquistadors went to new lands, they were not very concerned with individualism. When the first white people came to North America, they were not concerned with individualism. When whites went to the stars, we did not do that through individual initiative. That was a major state project. When the Roman Empire was created, that was not created out of classical liberalism. We need to embrace our Faustian spirit, our will to be great, our will to dominate, to be the best.
I think that all white people need to do is get over this false guilt and get over fear. And once you get over fear, then you can make America great again. You can do what needs to be done. And I've often wondered why America had all that fear. When I come back, we're going to take some calls. I also have some other questions for you. Okay, folks, welcome back. I'm Jesse Lee Peterson. Thank you so much for being with me. You can get involved by calling 888-77-JESSE, talking with Richard Spencer. Richard, one of my interns here, he really loves you. He's one of your biggest fans. He even
That's great.
Have Dallon come here for a minute. He want to meet you. I want him to meet you. He worked hard to get you here, and he even named his cat after you.
Oh my gosh, that's the first.
Plug your headset in there, on that side over there. Come and help him. Yeah, he'll help you. Dallon is probably one of your biggest fans on this side of heaven.
Yeah.
So can you are you able to turn the mic on? I mean, the camera on him?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I wanted him to just take a moment. He's chewing gum on the air, but he doesn't.
Not anymore.
So-
Hey, Richard.
Hey.
Yeah,
I'm really glad to
do
meet
we
you.
have the picture of my cat? Show up. I was going to name my cat Milo, but I thought, let me be a little more edgy, and I'm going to go all the way and name him Spencer.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So I just wanted you to...
We're taking back cats from the cat ladies. We're going to make cats great again.
So I wanted him to just take a moment to meet you. He really wanted to meet you, and he worked hard, and I understand that. So thank you. You have one question for him?
Yeah, where's that pig at? There we go. We got it on the screen.
No.
You're going to see it.
Aw.
We'll get it for him.
All
But
right.
his cat is named Richard Spencer, or Spencer.
Yeah, I had one question, Richard. In one of your speeches, you went on a tirade, epic tirade about wanting to outlaw football, which I am totally down for. And you talked about how it's really stolen white people's identity in a way. It's kind of hacked their sense of identity and made it into this trivial thing. And I was wondering if you could elaborate a little on this show about why you'd love to outlaw football.
Sure. I'll just say I played football when I was in high school, and I've certainly played amateur football, a million times with friends and things like that. So I'm not really against the game itself. I'm against this mass spectacle of people where, people in Alabama will not have an identity based on their region or their community or their family or their church or what have you. And they'll instead rip that out of their heart, and they'll place it all of their identity in this football program, this college football program, which makes universities millions of dollars, which brings in people who have no business whatsoever at being in a university. To call, the vast majority of athletes, of course not all, but the vast majority of Division I athletes, to call them student athletes is an affront. I mean, they are professional athletes, effectively. They have little to no interest in academia, and they don't benefit from attending the college, and certainly the college does not benefit from their presence. And basically, it's a kind of false sense of winning. It's a false sense of identity. It's even a false sense of evolutionary fitness, you could say, where people are sitting around cheering while watching people play this sport. Yeah. And I do think it is profoundly false identity. So yeah, I would try to ban college football. I don't think this has been good for us at all.
Richard, let me ask a little bit more about you. Are you a Christian?
I am not a believer. I have to be honest with you. I do resonate quite a bit with Christianity as an institution, as a cultural force. But I'll be also honest with you. Do I believe in God? No.
And so you don't believe in him, but do you believe there is a God, that he does exist?
I'm not sure about that. No.
Are you an atheist?
I am not a militant atheist. I do not wear a fedora. I am not trying to destroy Christian institutions. No. But I would say this. I do think that the world, our existence, this is it. We need to build eternity in this world. And we're going to achieve eternity in this world through having families, through having children, through being part of a line, for being part of a story that stretches across thousands of years.
You said that you're not a militant atheist. Are you a non-militant atheist?
I guess you could describe me as a non-militant atheist. Sure.
And so were you raised as a Christian?
Well, I was actually raised as an Episcopalian. So for some, that means I was raised as a non-Christian.
And were you raised by were your father and mother together in the home?
Yes, they were.
And who were you closest to, your father or mother?
My mother.
Your mother. And why weren't you closest to your father?
He is a very hardworking man. He is a ophthalmologist. He's an eye surgeon. So like a lot of with hardworking fathers, they often are fairly absent. But I never had a negative relationship or anything like that. But if you just ask me, which parent were you closer to? I would answer that.
One last thing about that. Do you want to be closer to your father?
At this point, I probably want to be closer to my children.
And not your father?
We're getting very psychological here. Maybe I should pay you for therapy.
People want to know about you. They love you. They want to know about you. So these are some questions that people have sent me. And so I want to just get to a few of those. Do you want to be closer to him?
Sure. I, of course, want to. Yeah.
Okay. And so have you ever told him that?
I have not told him that recently, no.
Okay. Let me ask, you, according to what I'm reading here, you said, "Hail Trump, hail victory," and people did a "Hail Hitler" sign on you. They accused you. What was going on? In short, because of time, and I want to get some calls, what was going on at that time, and what did you mean?
Sure. That was actually 1 week after Trump was elected. We were all very euphoric. I gave a speech at the National Policy Institute conference in Washington, D.C., and my host, I actually held up a glass that I was drinking. It was a late night speech. It was at 9 or 10 p.m. And I said, "Hail Trump, hail our people, hail victory." And it was a fairly bombastic ending. And about a half dozen people gave a Roman salute in the audience. And of course, the world freaked out. To be honest, if anyone's looked at, I don't take it back and I don't regret it, to be honest, at all. But if you look at my work since then, since Trump has been inaugurated, I've actually been very critical of Trump. So I am not some cheerleader or marching band for Donald Trump. So it was a moment in time, and it actually was a great thing, I think, because it showed that our movement is very high energy, that we're uncuffed in the sense of we don't obey all the shibboleths of the modern world. But at the same time, I don't think we should be a Trump booster club or anything like that.
888-77-JESSE. When I come back, I'll take your phone calls. Richard, let me just ask about being transracial. You said, I was told that you said you want to be transracial. Is that true? And I want to know what is that?
I'm sure I said that as a joke.
Oh, okay.
Just as a provocative way of getting people to rethink things. I think I stole that joke from a man named Sam Dixon, actually. And he said, and I'm sure I picked up on this, is that sometimes I wish that I could be transracial in the sense of it's a lot easier to be an African American because African Americans don't have any problem affirming themselves. If you ask a black man, "Who are you?" he'll say, "Well, I'm a black man." If you ask a white person, "Who are you?" they'll say, "Well, I'm a U.S. citizen who believes in liberty in the Constitution." Or
you're right.
I'm a liberal who believes for equality for all human beings. And I sometimes wish that I could be another race because things would be so much easier to be an identitarian.
But Richard, we all know for sure that there's no such thing as racism. It has never existed. And that black Americans, not all, are suffering, but most are suffering due to the destruction of the family and the lack of moral character. They're very angry. We know that it's a moral issue, and that's why they're suffering. We know that to tell the truth about women is not hating women. To tell the truth about Hispanics is not racial or racist. And so white people know this. Only thing that they need to do is to get over the fear. Don't fear these words, because if you're afraid of words, they control you. And the white men especially need to just get over the fear. Then you can take back the country.
I agree with so much of what you just said. I'm not sure I would agree that racism never existed. I mean, certainly racial feelings have always exist or are always there. I do think that the world as we live it is shot through with race. So you can't really talk about an issue like immigration. You can't even talk about even some pop cultural issues without race being there at some level. Because we do live in a racialized world, and we're just going to have to confront it. When you talk about why Hispanics are not white effectively, why they do not succeed at the level of average whites, that is about race at some level. And I agree. I wish the best for all. I would certainly hope that African Americans would embrace what you and Bond are putting forward. But at the same time,
there's no such thing as racial feelings. You either have hatred in your heart
of course,
or anger. I mean, you may be angry at a group of people. Most people in America today, and probably around the world, don't like black people, but they're not disagreeing with them because of their color. They are disagreeing with them, because of their culture. They are so angry. They are so violent. They lack respect for themselves and others. They are not independent people. They are dependent on the government. They are accusing others, and they are very violent. So people disagree with black people because of their culture, the lack of moral character, and not color. And so it's either right or wrong.
I know, but race is a part of that. Culture derives from race. When you think about a culture like Australia, you had all of these many Anglo-Saxons, white people, thrown across the world through a variety of means. And they recreated a culture that is recognizably and distinctly European. So culture derives from race. It's born out of it. You can't criticize culture without ultimately getting at race, because race is not just skin color.
When I was growing up, Richard, when I was growing up, I grew up under the Jim Crow laws in Alabama. I grew up on a plantation. Black people were not violent. They respected themselves and others. They were known as a moral people. They got married. They didn't blame white people. They knew that that was good and evil in all cultures of people. But that disappeared when the Civil Rights Movement came about. They had forced busing and all that mess and government dependency. And white people need to say that so that they can feel free and not be afraid to tell the truth. Give me a short answer to this. Is there a tension? There's something called the alt-light and then the alt-right. What is the alt-light? Is there a tension between the alt-light and the alt-right?
There definitely is. The alt-right are people who seem to pick up on the edginess or some of the memes or accoutrement of the alt-right, but who do not pick up on the ideology and actually reject it outright, or who have never thought through these ideas. Someone like Mike Cernovich is probably the best example of this. He's a major Twitter person who has broken some news and is tweeting, endlessly and so on. There is a kind of alt-light movement that doesn't really have an ideology, but tries to be edgy. I'm fine with that, and I'm actually fine with collaborating with them in a way, if they we want to be to their right. But the fact is, there is a huge tension at this point, and I don't think we'll ever get along ever again.
Are they nationalists?
Signaled us.
Are they a nationalist group of people?
Yeah, they are a kind of civic, raceless, colorblind, vague, toothless nationalist. I guess you could call them that way.
I know Mike very well.
Yeah.
I have him on my TV show. Let me ask. I believe in country first, God, country. We should put our country first before any other country. Am I a nationalist?
Yes, you are clearly a civic nationalist by saying that. I would describe myself more as a racial nationalist. I put white people, my extended family, first. I put them before. I think about them before I think about the United States. The United States could pass away in my lifetime, and that wouldn't really change how I think about the world. It really wouldn't change my goals.
Amazing. Richard, when I come back, we got to squeeze in a few calls here. We're almost out of time. Sure. Back in a moment, folks. Richard, I really need you to come back next week and we can just take calls because everybody and their mama want to talk to you. Is that possible?
I'd love to do it. I'd love to do it every week. This has been really a lot of fun.
Oh, good. So let's go to real fast. Tom out of Richmond, Virginia. Tom, thanks for calling. Go directly to your question or comment with Richard Spencer.
Richard, dude, I understand what you're saying, but I'm afraid that you're a little too late. American culture is not European culture. Traditional American culture is no longer. Now, it is foundationally, yes, but it has added so many things along the way that it is no longer the same as Europeans. Without the presence of black people in America, there would be no rock music, there would be no Elvis, there would be no Southern gospel, there would be no, our expressions, our attitudes is American Indian secondarily and African American more so than Indians in today's society. Now, I don't mean like this very moment, but I mean traditional music.
Let me get a quick response because of time here.
It's too late. I know what you mean, but Americans are not Europeans.
Tom, Richard, go ahead.
Europeans.
Hold on, Tom. Go ahead, Richard.
First off, it's never too late. And white people are the indispensable component of what American culture is. That doesn't mean that there aren't other factors and aspects of culture that we've culturally appropriated. But we are the driving genius that has made America what it is. Very similar thing to Japan. Japanese culture have adopted all sorts of characters from China, some things from India, and so on. But there's something uniquely Japanese about it. There's a spirit. There's a genius at the heart of it all. The genius of the white race and Anglo-Saxons in particular are at the heart of what makes America America. We might have adopted certain things from other cultures, but we made it. We are supreme.
Dude, listen, Jesse is not an African. He's American. I'm not a European. You know what?
Well, you're just changing
the subject. It would be so boring without the Beatles, without the Rolling Stones, without country music,
English people,
without the banjo.
Tom, I'm sorry to cut you off. To the rest of the callers, I'll take some calls when I come back. Richard, that was fun.
It was a lot of fun. I'd love to do it again.
Okay, my producer will contact you, and hopefully we can get you back next week so we can take a bunch of calls.
I'd love to. I really admire your work, and just continue to do what you do, Jesse.
Thank you, Richard. I appreciate that.